Hey everybody, this is Space Marine Steve from Play on Tabletop, and I'm joined yet again by Ian from Hyperspace Hobbies. And I am, I have been wrestling with a big question. Again, we've talked about the dramatic changes. We've talked
Yes.
about biggest winners. We've talked about biggest losers. We have gone over so much to do with this balance sheet because there is so much change.
Yes.
However, I think that there's a question that's hovering out there, and I can feel it and I can hear it in everybody's voices when they're talking about it. I can see it written behind everybody's huge walls of text. Should you actually go and change?
Should you snap off arms and glue on stuff you've had sitting in a box for 20 years?
Absolutely. So, like, let's say you take a tactical squad. Should all of your tactical squadrons now just have, well, they've got to have a free special weapon. They've got to have a free heavy weapon. Well, they've got to have a free combi weapon. Well, they've got to have a free thunder hammer.
And
Like,
plasma pistol
and
or
plasma
whatever.
pistol and right? Like, should you, because it's free, go and make your 10-man Stern Guard veteran have 10 power fists and 10 combi meltas and throw all of this expensive war gear on there now that's free right now? But this game changes so much.
Yeah, it's
all the time.
It's changing all the time. You might get caught, the fear would be you do all that and then you'd have to, in 2 months' time, 3 months' time, when they do an errata, start snipping all that stuff off because they realize they've made a mistake.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And the reason I asked this question is because I feel like everyone out there kind of like in internet land, I guess, is excited. Because if you're a Space Marine player, like, this feels anyways like a good time to be a Space Marine player, although I have voiced some of my opinions on that. I don't feel like this is the be-all, end-all, and we can get into that a little bit today.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some cool new strategies and things that you can do. Like, I know we were talking just before we went live with this that, the change to the outflanking thing. Like, you can put things in the strategic reserve.
Yes, coming in Arks of Omen.
Yeah.
Yeah, strategic reserves are essentially, they're free. So a lot of these units that you may have had in your mind, this would be a great unit if I could outflank it, but I don't want to spend the command points because you're limited with command points. Now you can essentially outflank whatever you want for free.
Yeah.
The problem is, so can everybody else. But there's things in the Space Marine toolbox that can assist you in making sure that that's less of a problem for you and more of a problem for your opponent, which is obviously it's infiltrators. They're amazing. They got a 12-inch you can't enter bubble.
Yep.
They also went down in points. Get a free Helix Gauntlet.
Yeah.
They're looking pretty good as of right now. And to keep your screens up, they're your number one unit.
Yeah, they're very, very good. It's just, I've played for so long with the mentality that you should play what you have.
Yes.
Right? And that, I must say, even though I have a lot of Space Marines, and like, for those of you that know me from Play on Tabletop and have seen me play multiple different Space Marine armies, like on that channel and from on other channels too, I have a lot of Space Marines. With that being said, though, like, I did a lot of like wheeling and dealing when it came to like aftermarket purchases,
right?
And so when someone says, "Oh, well, you have a huge Space Marine army, like, if you just need to spam triple gladiators and triple this and triple that because that's what's good right now, you can totally do it." That's not actually the case. Right? And my stuff isn't actually kitted out like that at all. Like, I don't have like a huge collection of heavy weapon Marines that all have grav cannons so that I can have 12 grav cannons across, triple Devastator squads and then 6 tactical squads all with grav cannons. Like, those are the kind of lists that I see populating online right now, where it spams like crazy these honestly very expensive and ornate loadouts.
Yes.
Right? That are not realistic.
You mean they're not realistic in the fact that they might not be sticking around for too long?
Well, yes, that. But also practically too. Like, let's say you take the time to dig out bits, or you purchase them online, or you get them 3D printed, and then you take the time to chop off arms and guns and and re-glue and remake and redo
Right.
everything to what? Play for 6 months and then have Games Workshop go, man, that was a bit far, wasn't it?
I know what you're thinking. You have the fear of modifying all your models just to have to modify them again.
Is it worth it? Is it worth it?
I would say no. But the thing is, I've got so many old models. You and me both have a lot of old models that I'm like, oh, a plasma gun tactical marine. I haven't played them in a very long time. I'd love to be putting those guys back on the battlefield, even if they're like not optimal.
Right.
Just to see it on the battlefield again. I'm not worried about that. I'll just put them on the battlefield just to see them. For all the new players out there that are thinking about snapping off bits or have sold parts of their impulsor because they didn't want to use the gun on top, the Belisarius missile launcher,
Right,
or any of that stuff, and you're thinking about reacquiring some of that, it's hard to say. If you want to be competitive, if you're a hyper competitive Space Marine player, then you might want to look into doing it. I wouldn't do all of your stuff. I would design a list to see how it goes, snap off some bits, and try to figure it out.
Yeah, I have this like gut feeling. And like for those of you that know me from Play on Tabletop, like, we work with Games Workshop and I am under an NDA, but like I have no idea what is coming next. I got nothing. And honestly, like,
this was a big enough shock for everybody. Like nobody saw this coming.
Exactly. And the thing is like whether, and we are gearing up to like new edition time, like that's possible within the next year or so.
Yeah, getting to the tail end.
We're getting to the tail. You can feel it. Almost every book is out now. This is the standard GW playbook. It has been for years. So like, who knows what's next? I have no idea. But I do know that what I don't want to do is walk in there and snap off like all my stern guard, just regular bolt guns.
Right. Put on combis.
Slap off combis and be like, yeah, let's do it. And then in the next edition, have that unit be 500 points.
Right.
And then what? How, like, great. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yes, I understand that.
Doesn't make me feel awesome. With that being said, though, like, I'm also a competitor. And so I have a lot of conflicted feelings of the fact that, this is what Space Marines are right now. Where you're like, I have to do whatever, like I have to just spam free war gear like crazy. You also,
I mean, honestly, with the amount of ones you roll, you got to take every advantage you can get.
I give it every advantage. But something that also just honestly, like truly upsets me is I've been like crafting some lists. I've been doing some math.
Yeah.
I don't feel like an all around Space Marine list is good.
You mean in the current meta? Though this is shaking the meta up. So
yeah, I'm projecting.
Meta right now is a big Jello bowl. We don't know when it's going to settle.
Yeah.
You're thinking that everything's going to have to go very niche.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be like Iron Hands, Imperial Fists, Dark Angels, Devastator Doctrine to the max.
Yes.
And then you just go like, oh, really high volume shooting. It's all heavy weapons. It's
Right.
I don't think the days of like my army looks kind of all over the place. I got a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Like the Space Marine jack of all trades thing that they are kind of known for. It has sometimes not ever really existed, but it definitely doesn't exist now. Space Marines do one thing well, which is like shoot incredibly well at the very beginning of the game.
Well, let me try to counter that.
Okay.
With my own little...
Dude, okay, I'm ready for it. Hit me with it.
The fact that in Arks of Omen, you don't have to pay for outflanking units benefits a lot of those Assault Doctrine Space Marine armies. Like getting those units that you want to keep safe until they can get a charge off on turn 3 can now hide and pounce onto the board, hope to some effect. Yes, if you're a shooting army, you can do that too, and the benefits might be better, but you don't steal objectives that way, right? You can steal an objective on turn 3 with a big pack of Space Marines. And assault intercessors are cheaper than ever.
They're cheap now, yeah.
Yeah. So keeping a 5-man squad in the wing, having them bomb on or constantly bombing them on, I think it could be quite effective in that. Still, I lean towards those Devastator armies.
Yeah.
Anything in Devastator Doctrine is going to have a huge bonus, but a lot of the close combat units got buffs in the fact that their war gear is free, and like a Thunderhammer is expensive, and any of that kind of kit seems to be on the more expensive side.
But it is, so basically, I guess to further my question and to push the point a little bit more, do you think that it's, let's say you do play, so let's say you're a White Scars player or a Black Templars player. Do you think that you take your White Scars list and you go, well, White Scars are fun and all, however, they're totally going to be like Iron Hands instead?
Absolutely not. As a White Scars player, I would say absolutely not. I'm more excited than ever to play White Scars. The fact that Assault Terminators with a Thunderhammer and a Storm Shield are as cheap as they currently are, it's thrilling. You can get a lot of them onto the table.
You can, yeah.
You can get a whole lot of them onto the table.
And that's even with Mini Marines being, as we said, like some of the biggest losers.
Some of the biggest losers, yeah. And White Scars has a lot of stratagems that are phenomenal, game-shaking stratagems, if you can plan it out and use it correctly. So, I mean, the thing is, they didn't win as much.
Yeah.
Not even close to as much as any of the Devastator Doctor Marine armies out there.
It's going to take
but
a lot
they
more
still
doing.
they still took some wins.
Yeah.
And I'll go back to the point that a lot of units now that people weren't playing things like Hellblasters because they were difficult to position on the table, and if you had them on the table, they would die right away because somebody would just pick them up because they're not that tough. Armor of Contempt, which is something they've lost. Now they're even softer, but now you can put them into reserves for free. So paying their point cost now and not having to pay an additional tax of a command point to put them into strategic reserve can make them shine a little bit more. Yeah. It's not a crazy points drop, but it's like a tactical buff.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of units got that. Like Eradicators stayed the same points cost.
But the Eradicators were solid anyways.
But now outflanking them doesn't cost you a command point.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Which is great. Which I think most people were doing anyways.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that as far as the ups and downs of this new release go, I think that's going to be really interesting with Space Marines having a lot of units that people aren't taking because of the outflank tax, and that tax being removed kind of opens up the options for things that you weren't thinking about or had shelved. And the fact that you have some of the best screen denial in the game currently with infiltrators, you just hug the wings like nobody's coming in, because you could spread them out, 2 inches in between each other, 12 inches from your board edge, and then 12 inches in front of that. You're like beyond the middle of the table. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
So let's to close out the video, let's try and answer that question. Like, should you really lean into this change? Like, what would you say? Should you really lean into it?
I think you should, because it's going to be around for a while. It's going to be around long enough that you're going to have to get used to it. As far as snapping off bits of your guys to try to make your game a little bit stronger, only if you want to. I can't tell people out there to start clipping their models off or going out and buying a Devastator kit because they can get some stuff for free. I think that would be probably what Games Workshop wants you to do, but I don't condone that. But what do you think?
I don't think you should. Like, I don't think you should, because I still think some of the things that I've said in the previous episodes are very valid. Like, the ecosystem, while this is beneficial to Space Marines, I think that it is good. I do not think that it is good enough. And so I think that if you go out and you lean into it super hard, like you're going, yeah, I'm going to pick up that third Gladiator, even though I only really needed to or wanted to,
right.
But I'm going to pick up the third one because they're super cheap.
Yes.
All right, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to buy more Devastator Marines because those are what's really good right now. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go do this and go and do that because it's really cheap and I can take all this stuff for free. Okay, but even if you do that, I don't think this moves the needle on Space Marines winning all their games.
Right.
I still think Space Marines, like right now, like some of the chapters have down in the 30% win rates, 20% win rates, some of them.
Yep.
Right? I think this takes those chapters and bumps them into like the low 40s. And it takes some chapters, I think, like Iron Hands, like we said, Iron Hands, Imperial Fists, for a little while are going to bump up.
Right.
And then I think it's going to even out. I don't think we're cracking 50. I could be wrong. You can quote me here right now, but I think on average, most Space Marine chapters are going to remain below, if not well below, the 50% win rate that they're trying to achieve.
Right.
Right? And they've done so much to try and fix it. I don't think they can fix it.
It's been every like couple months it just changes, right?
Yeah, but
You
Space
get
Marine's
Armor
still
of Contempt, you lose Armor of Contempt.
Space Marine's still down here.
Right, but I mean with now with all the codexes out and them trying to balance out some of the more ridiculous things, like thanks for nerfing flamers, that was necessary.
Yeah. Thanks for buffing to buffing cranking up the points on Tyranids.
Cranking up the
Like-
points on Tyranids. Yeah, I've heard some people's Tyranid lists. They
You got like
they check them
600
now and
points.
it's 500 or 600 points over.
You're like, whoa.
Yeah, which is a lot. And that's good because they're trying to bring balance to the game. It just happens to be at the end of this, like what feels like the end of this edition. Like
Yeah.
all the books are out. They're doing these wacky things. The Arks of Omen new detachment
Is like
it's just to
basically
grab
take
all.
whatever
It's
you
just to
want.
do whatever
Yeah.
you want, which is very like, okay, we're getting to the end of this road trip. The kids in the back of the car can scream and kick and play and slap each
whatever.
other all they want.
Yeah.
I don't care. We
It's
just need to
fine.
get to the next rest stop and
Exactly.
recharge our batteries, which would be
Exactly.
the next edition.
Probably, right? Like, and so, I wouldn't chase it. I think, and I'm not going to chase it. I don't think.
Well,
I'm gonna-
I mean, luckily we have such vast model ranges.
yeah,
Because we've been playing for 25 years.
I've got options.
Yes, that we have a lot of options.
But I'm not going out and I'm not buying.
No.
I'm not buying more kits. I'm not snapping off models. I've painted my models. I've glued my models. I'm playing what I have. If it's free, great. But I'm not going to chase it because it's just there's no point. Like it's all going to change in 6 months anyways. And even if a new edition doesn't come in 6 months or 12 months, and let's say we're waiting for a new edition for another however long, it doesn't matter. There's going to be another balanced data sheet at least in 6 months or in 3 months.
There would be, and it might modify this, it might not. If this for some reason we're wildly off with our predictions and Space Marines start hitting that 70% win rate,
You better believe they're cranking the points back up.
they're going to be adjusting.
Yeah,
Iron Hands might be able to do that.
maybe. Right, but then also the problem here too is that Iron Hands could ruin it for everybody else.
That's true.
Right? So if Iron Hands win too hard, right, then what? Okay, well, then they'll probably do is they'll take away the whole, like, you can
Cycling
pick your
chapters,
cycling
yeah.
thing. They'll go back to the way it is. And, it's hard to say, right? Because you've got one book that's really for, like, 7 or 8 armies, right?
Yeah.
That's the problem, right? But it's just,
Who knows? Maybe
Who
they're
knows?
testing something out. Like
yeah. I mean,
they
who knows?
might go, okay, you can start in Devastator Doctrine and then you have to move to another doctrine. But you could choose between going to Assault or Tactical. Like this might be the
it's
next
hard to
step.
say.
They might just be figuring it all out.
Yeah, it's really hard to say. But
I just want to be able to start in Assault Doctrine and stay in Assault Doctrine
Yeah.
the entire time.
Yeah,
just
yeah,
give
I
me
bet.
that.
just
I'll
give
take
you
that.
Well, yeah, Death Watch can sort of do that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they
Yeah,
totally
Death Watch
can.
Which, funny enough, the Death Watch thing supersedes the new rule. So Death Watch don't get to camp. They have to pick Devastator once, Tactical up to 2 or 3 times. No, up to 2 times. And then they have to choose the Assault Doctrine between 2 and 3 times. So they have to cycle, funny enough, because their rule supersedes the actual rule.
Right. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that is a bit of a disadvantage.
Sort of. But, I mean, Death Watcher are kind of a really niche army anyways.
And they're really strong too. Like
They're
they've
really
got
strong, yeah.
they got some very interesting
Like
things that
strats
they can do.
abilities. And,
Yeah.
But anyways, before we get too off topic, you have been watching Space Marine Steve and Ian from Hyperspace Hobbies, and this is Master the Chapter. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great night.
I'm gonna go buy a Hammerfall bunker.
No,
like,
don't
right
do it
now. Yeah.
No, damn it.